All right, hello guys. Welcome back to part two of our talk about um, the paper exploring the roles and impacts of women in executive leadership. And it's kind of just like an analysis of gender diversity in top corporate management. And today, my name is Ethan Lin, and I'm joined by my good friends Ikyu Zhang and Jennifer Liu. And today, we're just going to be going over some additional topics about gender diversity in the workplace and how that kind of influences the world we live in today and like the way corporations are shaped today. Right. So, Ikyu, I know last time when we left off, we kind of talked about gender diversities and kind of like characteristics of females, as well as more of like how gender diversity is impactful whenever it's like a corporate issue, right? But I wanted to ask a little bit about like gender diversity and how that influences a firm and like the people inside of it whenever it's not a corporate, like it's not a corporate interest, it's more like a government, like a quota, for example, that's a like government issued. How does that have any particular influence compared to like gender diversity in the more mainstream form?
Okay, so there have we've already have like the mandate gender diversity for women, and it should have like many pros and cons of it. For example, it would just help to increase the opportunity for women to serve on corporate boards, which is like straightforward, because women are currently like underrepresented in the board, and so this would help to address that issue and that gap. And also with more women into the board, it could help to provide some more role models of women and mentors for younger women who are aspiring to those leadership positions. And in this way, it will help to kind of normalize that women are in those leadership positions. And also, like with more women into the board, it would just basically help to bring more perspective and new ideas into the boardrooms and some decision making. And it would just like basically help to lead to better governance and oversight. And however, like mandate things are always like very controversial because it would just kind of have create resentment or backlash if those kind of requirements are kind of overreach into the corporate, because it would just like create resentment between the corporate and also the government. And because women, if they are like basically appointed to those positions because they are like forced to, it would just like become like tokenism, because women, they're just like appointed to those positions primarily to fill the gap or the rather than like fully based on their merits or qualifications. And this could like unfairly call into those questions on those female directors' competence. And also there will also be more less potential spots for those male counterparts, because we are just because we're just like increase women's representation over a short period. Yeah, and I think that's like basically some
Yeah.
potential points of mandate diversity.
Yeah, I know. I think in like what you're talking about with like women kind of like filling in whenever it's more of like mandated, it's kind of like uh you can kind of think of it as like quantity over quality, right? Especially since like the study kind of shows that like women they tend to have like different values when it comes to like leading a company. Like for example, women are kind of they're more altruistic and for example, and that in itself is like a positive, but then whenever like it comes to a corporate setting, it can also create issues because um when you're more altruistic, you're going to want to give more back, and when you're leading a company, giving more back potentially means like losing money for the sake of like doing social good. And when you compare that to like traditionally what companies want, which is to earn profits and stuff like that, being more altruistic, um, that's not really something that's mainstream because you could say it's because like men have dominated kind of like the management setting for a long time. But when you add like the addition of, you know, different interests, different inherent interests when it comes to like management, you know, things can kind of go sideways. And it's kind of proven so, right? I mean, we see in like this European Commission in 2012, whenever they set a quota for like 40% of women, 40% of corporate management outside of like executive management, they set like a quota that like 40% of the people who are directors needed to be women. And it was under the claim that like women like increased value for the firms. Um, but we kind of saw like how shareholders like didn't exactly back that claim up, because what we saw was that stock price and stuff like that decreased over the years after this quota. So it, it's not exactly the most confident, how'd you say, the most confident reflection of women in executive leadership.
Yeah, but those results may be like more related to those stereotypes of women's, and also what the government want to like break with the mandates diversity is also some like stereotypes and biases, which is like the glass ceiling and glass cliff phenomenon. Because women are like facing some glass cliff ceiling because there are some like kind of invisible barriers that prevent them from advancing to those top positions, and that's what like the government want to break with the mandate diversity. And this kind of barrier are like contributed with the discrimination, and this discrimination may also like lead to those shareholders or stakeholders to like see no good with the company. And yeah.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the glass ceiling, like one of the big questions that arise is kind of like, what value do women bring as opposed to men, right? And that's kind of like what really sets the standard for like the glass ceiling, because like whenever companies have to like choose between like appointing who to appoint, it's kind of more of like who has the best qualities, not like which gender should I point. And because women have been discriminated against or just like inherently left out of the positions for so long, it's kind of been like set, like the stereotypes have already been set to stone. There's really no undoing the stereotypes. And so whenever it comes to like executive management, it's like it's kind of like a question of like, how do women provide, how do women more of like show their value, because we know women can like provide the same exact values that men have, right? Like in our last talk, we kind of talked about how like there's really no difference in like in internal value of a company whenever a woman's in charge versus whenever a man's in charge. And by in charge, I mean like in the CEO position. So it's kind of more of like, how do what's really like the best way um to like reflect these, what's really the best way to reflect the benefits that women bring, as opposed to simply having like the stereotypes be the main deciding factor, right? So let's see here.
I think
Yeah.
oh, I just wanted to add something that I think it's like that's a good point. And I really like the figure like in your paper where it shows just like there's only 5 out of 100 members of executive teams are women. And I feel like that kind of puts it into perspective, just regarding like really how few like women are in those positions. So I think it's like with mandated kind of gender diversity, if you bring more women like into the executive teams and like let's say like corporate workplaces, you would probably also have more data and like a wider like variety to kind of like examine, because like right now if you have like 5 out of 100 women, like are they all women from similar, let's say, like economic backgrounds or like racial backgrounds, because I think that's also like a very deciding factor in like, well, it's also like a factor in decision making. So if you're kind of hiring like these women who have similar backgrounds as their male counterparts or like with each other, you might see like less of a less change in their behaviors, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you can look, if we want to like really see like an example of that, we kind of look to like, for example, the Department of Education, where I think like 70% or something along those lines, like 70% of the workers in Department of Education or something along those lines are women, and like in like health services, education, and things like that. And I think if we want to really like look at how like executive management can be changed, we kind of need to start from the bottom up and look at these industries before we look at like the top management of these of other industries. Because I think in the last talk we kind of talked a little bit, explained a little bit how like there's like a really trickle up effect where whenever there's like an increased proportion of women as like the workers for the like a specific labor sector, we kind of see like more women being a part or having positions of power or executive power in these departments, like in these departments, because there's like support from the people underneath. So yeah, I think it's just really, it's kind of important to how do you say it? It's kind of important to like set a foundation to where women can kind of, you know, build up instead of having to like overcome. If that makes sense.
Sure. I think earlier you also mentioned like earlier in the paper how women in higher positions of power are more likely to hire more women or like advocate for gender equality in the workplace. And I think so it kind of goes both ways, right? Like in all sort of management levels, I think it's important to have like that diversity, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, so I think that's that kind of concludes our talk today. There's we kind of talked about like the different ways that, you know, women can be more integrated, which kind of added on to what we talked about in the last talk. So thank you everyone for joining, and I'll see you next time.